Hey, good evening. Wednesday night, March the 17th. Welcome to The Hopeful Life and our midweek Bible study, live streamed, or streamed, I should say. I'm so glad you've joined me tonight. We are working through the book of First Thessalonians, and the study's taking longer than I had planned, but that's because I just love the text. I get bogged down in talking through the story and the principles, and I guess that's okay. Too much time in God's Word, I don't think we can do that, so we'll enjoy it. We're in 1 Thessalonians 3 tonight, and before we resume the story and finish this particular outline, it's called Hope Comes Back to Life. Before we do that, let me visit with you and talk to you about the church. First of all, our church is doing so well, and I'm so thankful for all the good indicators. We have welcomed so many new people to our church. We had 2 new brunches for newcomers, I should say. In the last 2 weeks, we had over 100 and I want to say 105 or 110 people that came to those brunches. It was sweet fellowship. We, in part, heard each other's stories. We're just really excited about that. Now, let me encourage those of you that are at home and you're still live streaming on Sunday. And there is a segment of our church that has legitimate, serious comorbidities and risk factors. And I want you to know, I fully understand, and I don't want you to take a risk that God is not giving you clear peace to take. Okay, I'm not pressuring you, and please don't ever feel pressure from me. We have a broad and we had a diverse church family, and there are people in our church right now that should come back that aren't. There are people that probably shouldn't come back and are. And there are people that shouldn't come back and they are streaming. And I'm so glad that you are staying connected and that you know we love you, we're praying for you, we miss you. And I know you'd rather be at church. So please don't ever feel pressure from me. Please know, though, that we do miss you. If you happen to be seeing this stream and you're one of those people that could and probably should come back, then we hope you will. We look forward to seeing you, and I encourage you to guard your heart against Satan getting an advantage over you and giving you a spirit of passivity or lethargy or complacency spiritually, because that's just not good for you. It's certainly not good for the body, the church, and it's certainly not good for the cause of the gospel and for the kingdom of Jesus that he wants to use you to bless. And that's really what we're going to see here in a minute, is that God uses the church family to bring and to sustain hope in itself and in others. He uses us, and we're going to see that in real time in the life of the Apostle Paul. This Sunday, we will continue our rhythm series. We will have 2 more messages in that series on autumn, and I hope it's been an encouragement and blessing to you. And then this is the biggest part of this announcement. The 28th and the 31st, we launch second quarter groups for the year, and we have really 2 options. We have online and on-site. And then in the on-site options, we have 3 options or 3 kinds of groups. First is the Welcome Home group, and that's Dana and I are teaching that group. And that's for new people that are willing to commit to 8 weeks. It's an opportunity for us to get to know you and hear your story and share with you our heart and scriptural principles on what is a healthy church and what is a biblical church. So that if you're new, I hope you'll register for that class and join us in the east side of the fellowship hall every Wednesday at 7. Then we have Growth Track resuming on Sunday mornings, and this is also for new folks. So we have Starting Point, that's the gospel; Real Christianity, that's a relationship with Jesus; and Absolutes, that is the foundational doctrines of the Christian faith. And so you can sign up for those. And then if you've been through those kinds of classes and you're a long-term faithful adult in our church, there are other classes you can sign up for, again, either on-site or via an e-group. You can do that right now if you go to ebcnewington.com/groups. One last announcement. Pray for Easter. We have all of our Easter print materials in. We have, Pastor Sherwin has a tremendous drive-through scavenger Easter egg hunt for the kids. It will be spaced into 3 or 4 locations. The families will go together and participate in the scavenger hunt and games. It'll be great, and it'll be safe. That's the idea. We're trying not to have a large group in any one location, and it's just a brilliant idea. And then our whole team is working on a wonderful Easter weekend, Good Friday, and then 3 services on Easter Sunday. And I hope that you'll celebrate the resurrection of Jesus with us and that you'll invite everybody you know and love to do the same. Well, let's turn to 1 Thessalonians chapter 3. And for the next few moments, let's revisit this section of Scripture. Paul has been banished. He's been quarantined in the city of Athens and then Corinth. He's been put on a ship for his own safety. He was having a thriving, hopeful, fruitful ministry in northern Greece, but those Judaizers kept wanting to kill him, the pesky Judaizers. And so his friends, Timothy and Silas, put him on a boat, sent him away for his own safety, said, we'll take care of things here. And Paul ended up alone and discouraged and out of resources and out of energy emotionally and spiritually and psychologically. And he ended up at the city of Corinth waiting. Tried more than twice. We studied that to get back. Couldn't get back. Satan hindered him. God wouldn't allow it. God had other plans, and Paul had to deal with that. Finally, Timothy and Silas come with encouragement and offering, good news, companionship. And Paul is comforted and greatly energized. We'll see this again tonight, to resume ministry in Corinth. But that's when he writes the letter to the church at Thessalonica. And it's a gushing letter of love and affirmation and comfort and hope. His purpose is to breathe hope and to breathe fresh wind into the faith of the church at Thessalonica because of the blessing they've been to him. So it's a letter that really is filled with encouragement and hopefulness and reasons to profile church health, ministry health, and what spiritual leadership should be. Okay? Chapter 1, he talks about all the good things that happened when he went to Thessalonica and remembering with great favor and with great joy their labor of love, their work of faith, their patience of hope. Chapter 2, he profiles his own ministry among them and how he operated. And he gives us a really good chapter on what it looks like to be a fatherly spiritual leader, a shepherd. And then later in the chapter, he talks about trying to get back and not being able to, and missing them and longing to be with them. And then we turn the page to chapter 3, and we find out that God used 4 different things to breathe life, to breathe hope into Paul, which is now being turned back around on the church at Thessalonica. And I just love, really the high-end lesson here is that the relationships in the church were mutually dependent. They were fueling one another with hope and encouragement and strength. And that's what God does with us. He uses us to bless each other. Church should not be a one-way conversation. And I got to say, if there's been one hard thing this year with COVID, and I know there have been many, but one of them that jumps out as I read chapters like this is just that it's often been one way. I'm looking at a camera and you're looking at a screen, and I know you all are out there, but I don't ever really have any contact with a lot of you. And I don't need it in terms of just, my codependence. I don't need you to stroke my ego, but I am blessed to relate to you, to know you, and to serve with you. And I sure do miss a lot of our church family. So I feel Paul's heart in this letter as he can't be with the people he'd like to be with. And so he kind of recounts the story. I want to read verses 1 through 10. We'll skip past the first 3, quickly skim past them. We'll land on the 4th point, which I haven't covered yet. Wherefore, when we could no longer forbear, this is his time back in Thessalonica, we thought it good to be left at Athens alone. That was his ship ride to Athens alone, and now he can't be with them. And sent Timotheus, our brother and minister of God, our fellow laborer in the gospel of Christ, to establish you and to comfort you concerning your faith. So what we lifted there was that hope flows as we serve together on gospel teams. We spent an entire week on points 1 and 2. Paul said, I can't be there, but Timothy can. And there's so much in that principle. We shouldn't do ministry alone, that the Christian life is not a solo journey, that we really do need each other, and that we share the care of each other. I'm not an omnipresent individual. I can't be everywhere at everything all the time. I have to do what I believe God is calling and leading me to do. And we have a whole team of people, staff and lay leaders. We have a care team. We have a vast network of deacons and adult group leaders and disciplers. And this body, this church body, is a caregiving body. And in that sense, we pastor each other. I pastor you, you pastor me, the pastoral staff pastors me. It's a wonderful thing to care for each other. And it puts hope in all of us. So I hope that I can put hope into you, and it sure blesses me when you put hope into me, and so it goes with our whole team. Paul had Timothy. Timothy had Paul. They had Silas. They had others. Paul always worked with a team, and gospel ministry, our hearts are most thriving when we're engaged with a team. Hey, let me sidebar and say, if you are ready to get back on your team, we are ready to receive you on your team. And frankly, we need you. We need folks to get back engaged in childcare, nursery, and children's ministry, and music, and media, and other things. Boy, do we. Greeters and hospitality. Our church family is returning, and so we need servant-hearted team members to re-engage. And sure thankful if you will. But that's really the pattern, is that Paul served in teams. The second thing we saw was that hope grows as we redeem hardship. And we spent a lot of time here. I just have never gotten away these last few weeks from that word appointed thereunto. He said that no man should be moved by these afflictions. For yourselves know that we are appointed thereunto. So Paul sent Timothy to establish and comfort concerning their faith, to strengthen them. Why? So afflictions wouldn't move them. So they would know that afflictions are appointments, assignments in the sovereignty and providence of God. In this story that he's writing, he redeems hardship, and we can be a part of that as we accept the assignments instead of complaining about the discomfort. Number 3, we saw this last week. Hope resurges through communicated assurance. So verse 6 is when Timothy and Silas return. For now, when Timothy came from you unto us, and brought us good tidings of your faith and charity, and that ye have good remembrance of us always, desiring greatly to see us, as we also to see you. Now, let's just pause and break down verse 6. I want you to see the 3 or 4 or 5 things that Timothy brought, okay? Now when Timotheus, first of all, he brought himself, and he brought Silas, okay? So he brought friendship. He brought companionship. And I got to tell you, one of the great gifts of God when you're in gospel ministry, whether vocationally or not, that's not my point. We are all in gospel ministry. And one of the great gifts is the companionship that we share. I got to tell you, I love the things I get to do in ministry, but let me tell you what I love more. I love the people I get to do it with. And that includes you. I love our staff. I love our deacons. I love our school staff. I just love the teams, and I love doing ministry together. It's fun. One friend of mine says, ministry is a narcotic to me, and I get it. It's addicting to me. I love serving Jesus with you. So Timothy brought companionship. He brought himself. Then it says, came from you unto us and brought us good tidings. He brought good news. And I got to tell you, the world is full of bad news. It occurred to me today, again, the news stream. You know what would happen to CNN, Fox News, CNBC, MSNBC, all the news channels and all the news hours and news programs? You know what would happen if they reported good news? They would go out of business because we would all stop watching, because if there's nothing to be alarmed about, we would all do other things. We would play games and take walks and ride bikes and go places and eat and talk and tell stories and read books and watch movies. We would do fun stuff. If everything was okay, we would not turn on the news. And so every night, every news program is built. Its very design is to tell us how things are not okay so that we have stuff to worry about. And I got to tell you, I can't live that way. And neither could Paul, and neither can you. Okay. Timothy brought good tidings. And let me tell you, we say, well, Pastor Cary, there's just no good tidings. That's just not true. First of all, even if you're not a Christian, Just take a walk on a sunny day. You'll find out that Earth is rotating, sun is rising, weather patterns are happening, spring is coming, summer is coming. Life is moving. Chick-fil-A is still making chicken sandwiches. Krispy Kreme is still frying donuts. I mean, good stuff is still happening on planet Earth. I'm well aware that there are bad things on planet Earth, but there's a whole lot of good things to enjoy, a whole lot of gifts from God. But let me push that aside for a minute. Let's just say that you've got a terrible, terrible life on planet Earth. The circumstances are horrible, okay? If you're a believer, you have oceans of good news to rejoice in. Because, as I said Sunday, your gravest concerns have been resolved. Your deepest, darkest fears have been resolved by Jesus on the cross. The God of the universe, the highest being in all of time and space and eternity, has set his affection on you, has redeemed you if you've trusted him, and calls you his own, and is waiting to bring you home into his kingdom forever and ever and ever, where there will never be night, never be sorrow, never be tears, never be sickness, never be death, ever again. So you've got oceans and oceans of good news to rejoice in, okay? So Timothy brought himself, companionship, friendship. He brought good news. And let me just challenge you to bring some good news to somebody, okay? Let me challenge you every day to look for the good news and report the good news and share the good news and bleed it onto people around you, spew it onto people around you, not coughing and breathing, but talking, sharing, spreading. One thing I hate about the masks is you can't see a smile. And I'm smiling at people, but they can't see them. Bring good news, okay? Timothy brought good news of your faith. So the good news he brought was others' welfare in their faith, others being faithful to God, okay? Which is always encouraging. When someone you love is growing in grace, that's huge. That's so encouraging. Pastor Derek told me of one of our church members he reached out to that he hadn't seen and we haven't seen in a while. And the gentleman that he texted him right back, said, I'm so connected, I'm growing, and we'll see you soon. It was so encouraging to hear his faith. And charity. Timothy brought an offering. Timothy brought resources. It's meaningful when you're in need and somebody steps in and blesses you. Somebody shares, somebody helps to meet that need. And that was significant in this moment of need for Paul. And that you have good remembrance of us always. Timothy said, they love you and miss you, okay? Now think about all these components, okay? Here I am, I'm your friend. I got good news, okay? Already Paul's cheered up. The people in Thessalonica love the Lord and are doing great. Hey, they've sent you an offering. Here's some resources to help you do the work here in Corinth. And boy, do they love you and miss you. Do you see? Can you feel Paul just resurging? Okay. Good remembrance. Always desiring greatly to see you. Can't wait to see you. Therefore, brethren, we were comforted. Now, we talked about that last week. Comforted in all our affliction and distress by your faith. Paul, in his own suffering, was energized by the encouragement that others sent him. Now, listen, my friend, I want to be that for other people. Do you? Will you? Who is within your reach that you could breathe good news, life, encouragement, comfort into tomorrow and Friday and Saturday? And you know what? Just make it your ministry to be the good news person in your environments, in your home, in your world. Okay, number 4, and we're done. Hope presses on in mutual steadfastness. Now, the outcome of hope resurging in Paul's life was that he pressed on because of all these factors. God used this church family to breathe life into Paul, just as he had used Paul and Timothy and Silas to breathe life into them. Look at verse 8. For now we live. The word live is quickened. We are revived. We are strengthened. We are energized. We are pressing forward if you stand fast in the Lord. Paul said, as long as you're standing fast, I am energized to do God's work here. And the alternate would be true. If he heard of their faltering and they're falling away, he would have only just struggled where he was and longed to get back to help them. So your steadfastness encourages somebody else with life and vitality. Verse 9, for what thanks can we render to God again for you, for all the joy wherewith we joy for your sakes before God. Do you see? Now think about, contrast this with verse 7. He was in affliction and distress, and now he is comforted. He is brought back to life. He is thanking God. He is joying with great joy before God. Paul's a different person just because he got news and encouragement from his church friends in Thessalonica. What a beautiful picture. What an amazing power that encouragement has. Your words of encouragement to whoever you love go deep. They're powerful, sometimes nuclear to the heart. They're resuscitating. They're like those electric paddles that you have to say, clear. They jolt somebody back to life when they're on the edge of discouragement. So look what he says. We are joying for your sakes before God night and day, praying exceedingly, I love this, that we might see your face and might perfect that which is lacking in your faith. Paul says, I am so happy that you're doing well. It makes me all the more longing. Night and day, I'm longing to be with you. I have an exceeding desire, and I'm praying exceedingly, unceasingly, that we might again see your face and might perfect, that we might mature, that we might increase, that we might bring to fruition or completion whatever is lacking. There's built in there the sense that the believers in Thessalonica should have had a forward trajectory, growing and growing and growing, and that spiritual leaders are to have the same desire to keep growing, but to bring others along and to perfect, to root, to ground, to strengthen, to establish others in the faith. Paul had a passion, a profound joy over their steadfastness, but then a passion to fuel it and to increase it. Paul is literally, by this point, just gushing over God's people. And it just reminds me of the bond that we share as a church family. It is precious and it is exceedingly powerful. A healthy church is a church where when you get around each other, your hearts are energized. Your hearts are breathed into life, strength. You ever had a church experience that going to church was like the most miserable day of the week or the most miserable moment of the week? I mean, it was just like sucked the life right out of you. Maybe you've come through a contentious season in a church or divisive season in a church. Maybe you were part of a meltdown of some kind or a failure of some kind or a discouraging season of some kind. Maybe you are now. You know, the picture in the New Testament is that the church body, when growing in maturity, when unified, and when really eyes on Jesus, growing in his word, with authentic leadership, there's a health, there's a purity that the gospel produces in that. It's not that the people are perfect. No, healthy churches, people stumble all over each other and bump into each other, and there's all kinds of misunderstandings and work-throughs. But the gospel allows those work-throughs and those misunderstandings to be resolved, and the pursuit of unity and the pursuit of health and the value of health is a precious, wonderful thing. And what comes out of that health is mutual encouragement. And boy, do we need that in a COVID year and in the 21st century. The bond we share as a church family, the encouragement we give one another, the hope that we breathe into each other is a very precious and powerful thing. And it can bring us, literally, it can bring us back to life. My friend, I think the big takeaway here is let's be like Paul. Let's be steadfast in our afflictions, but let's also be an encourager. As soon as he was encouraged, he turned right around and wrote a letter and encouraged back. And this was the quality of this man. This was the quality of this church. It was a It was a life-giving, hope-flowing culture and environment. And I think that really speaks a lot about a healthy church. Well, we're going to leave it there, 1 Thessalonians 3, verses 1 through 10, and we'll pick it up there next week for the Hopeful Life. Can't wait to get to the back half of this chapter. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow on Enough for Today.